What's poppin', Chicago sports fans? And we're back at it again with some more memories of Chicago sports history. It's the year in Chicago sports, and this year we're going back, way back to the year 1932, which was another crazy lit year for all the franchises. So let's get it. The year in Chicago sports.
It was the Great Depression. Times were hard, but that didn't stop fans from watching sports, especially the sport of boxing. January 28th, Jackie Fields fought and defeated Lou Brouillard by decision in 10 rounds to win the World Welterweight title. Fields regained the National Boxing Association World Welterweight Championship before the enthusiastic crowd of 11,000. Fields began to take a lead in points in the sixth with vicious lefts and strong sweeping rights that traveled from his hips. The 10th may have gone to Brouillard by a shade, but Fields had taken a wide points margin and was the stronger as the final bell sounded to an end. Jackie Fields was involved in a car accident in 1932 outside Louisville, Kentucky that resulted in a detached retina, a serious injury to his left eye. And in 1938, he lost his eye entirely. This is Robert Alexander Cole's monument as it stands today in Lincoln Cemetery. Known as King Cole, he was one of Chicago's most successful businessmen. He was president of the Metropolitan Funeral System Association from 1927 to 1956. In early 1932, King Cole purchased the American Giants from white florist William E. Trimble. The Negro Leagues reopened and the American Giants won 5 pennants, along with another pennant in the 1932 Negro Southern League.
The 1931-1932 Chicago Blackhawks season was the team's 6th season in the NHL, and they were coming off their first ever Stanley Cup Finals appearance as they lost to the Montreal Canadiens in 5 games in the 1931 finals. The Hawks would not bring back Dick Irvin as the head coach though, as they rehired Bill Tobin, who coached the Hawks at the end of the 29-30 season. Despite finishing with an under 500 record, as the Hawks would get 47 points in 48 games, the team finished in second place in the American Division and would qualify for the playoffs for the 3rd straight season. The Blackhawks would be led offensively by Johnny Gottselig, who would lead the club with 13 goals and 28 points. In goal, Chuck Gardner would win the Vezina Trophy, as the Blackhawks would have the fewest goals against in the entire league. Chicago would face the Toronto Maple Leafs in the opening round of the playoffs for the 2nd straight year. However, unlike the previous season, the Blackhawks could not defeat Toronto in the 2-game total series, as the Leafs would eliminate the Hawks by a 6-2 score. The 1932 Chicago White Sox season was the White Sox 32nd season in the major leagues. They finished with a record of 49-102, good enough for 7th place in the American League, 56.5 games behind the first place New York Yankees. The 1932 season was their worst ever by winning percentage. Nothing much to say here, but they were led by outfielder Bob Seeds and Bob Fothergill, as well as ace Ted Lyons, and rounding up the rotation, Sam Jones. Nothing much to say here. Moving on. The 1932 Cubs finished first in the National League with a record of 90-64, 4 games ahead of the second place Pittsburgh Pirates. One of the most notable moments of the season was the rift between ownership and one of the greatest hitters of all time, Rogers Hornsby, who was bothered by boils on his feet during the start of the 1932 season, which kept him out of the lineup until May 29th. Cubs president never liked the idea of Hornsby as manager, and he briefly resigned when principal owner Bill Wrigley ousted McCarthy in his favor. Over the next year and a half, Vic grew increasingly dissatisfied with Hornsby as a player-manager, believing his autocratic managing style hurt team morale. And Vic believed Hornsby breached an unwritten rule of baseball, which called for the manager to argue calls himself. On August 2nd, although the Cubs were in second place, Vic fired Hornsby as manager and released him as player. First baseman Charlie Grimm took over as manager for the rest of the season, and that proved to help them as the Cubs advanced to the 1932 World Series, as well as the players voted not to give Hornsby a share of money from the World Series. This team had notable players like catcher Gabby Hartnett, of course first baseman and manager Charlie Grimm, second baseman Billy Herman, and the ace Lon Warneke and Guy Bush to round out the lineup and the rotation for the Cubs. The World Series had 2 games in Yankee Stadium to start, and the Cubs lost those, and the team was eventually swept 4-0 by the New York Yankees. But the most memorable moment and controversial moment in sports history is Babe Ruth's called shot. It was the home run hit by Babe Ruth in the 5th inning of Game 3, held on October 1st, 1932, at Wrigley Field in Chicago. During the at-bat, which came against Charlie Root, Ruth made a pointing gesture, which existing film confirms, but the exact nature of his gesture is ambiguous, neither fully confirmed or refuted. The story goes that Ruth pointed to the center field bleachers during an at-bat and called his own shot. On the next pitch, Ruth hit a home run to center field. Now this move today is controversial still, and some accounts from the pitcher Charlie Root, who swore on his deathbed that it never happened. Although the Cubs lost, they were honored with a ticker parade throughout the city. Just another classic moment in Chicago sports history. The 1932 Chicago Bears finished the 32 season tied for first place with the Portsmouth Spartans with 6-1 records. Now, Spartans quarterback Dutch Clark had not accounted for this extra game as a tiebreaker. He doubled as the basketball coach at his alma mater, Colorado College, and the school refused his request for leave. So that left them with their second-string quarterback. The game was set to be played at Wrigley Field, the Bears' home stadium, but due to severe blizzards followed by extremely cold temperatures and wind chill, the game was moved indoors to Chicago Stadium. A week before the game, the concrete surface had tan bark for a sponsored circus. There was elephant manure, an odor that caused a Bears player to throw up. Because of the limited dimensions of the indoor arena, special rules were adopted for the game. The field was only 80 yards long, 60 yards between goal lines, and 45 yards wide. The goalposts were moved from the end lines to the goal lines, and this would continue all the way from 1933 and 1974 just because of this game. Every time a team crossed the 10-yard line, the ball was moved back 20 yards to allow for the shortened field. Because it proved so popular, the 1932 NFL playoff game started a new era for the National Football League and for American football in general. Through 1932, the league had used the same rules as college football, and beginning with 1933, the NFL introduced its own set of rules. The biggest legacy, however, was the creation of the NFL championship game in 1933, the NFL's original championship game, which would become the Super Bowl. As for basketball, Chicago had always been a basketball town. They always had a professional team and semi-professional teams, as well as the Harlem Globetrotters were here until 1931, which were based in Chicago. Also, the New York Wrens used to face the Globetrotters in the World Professional Basketball Tournament in Chicago. Also, they had the Loyola Ramblers and Northwestern Wildcats. And basketball used to be played in the cage. 1932 was a crazy year for Chicago sports and definitely one to remember. Stay tuned for more historical videos on Chicago sports. Like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching. I'm out. Peace.